The percentage of Americans that worry they will not be able to pay their bills is higher than it was during the Great Recession. Michael Snyder reports, do you remember how painful the Great Recession was? 2008 and the years immediately following were definitely a very dark chapter in our history, but a new study has actually found that the percentage of Americans that worry they won't be able to pay their bills is actually higher today than it was back then. Slowly but surely, our economic strength has been fading and our standard of living has been falling. Unfortunately, now we have reached a point where a very large portion of the US population is really struggling. According to a CNN poll that was just released, almost 40% of all US adults say they worry most or all of the time that their family income will not be enough to pay to meet expenses. Many Americans regularly worry that they won't be able to make ends meet. Nearly 4 in 10, that's 39% of US adults, say they worry most or all of the time that their family's income will not be enough to meet expenses, according to a new CNN poll. That's up from 28% who expressed those concerns in December 2021, and it's similar to the number seen during the Great Recession, 37%. To cope, significant shares of Americans say they are adding side jobs, cutting down on driving, and putting more expenses on credit cards. And if you would have asked me before I saw the results, I would have been quite confident that the number during the Great Recession would have been higher than the number in 2024. Just like everyone else, I remember the Great Recession as such a painful time. And sadly, the economic pain that we are experiencing now is just beginning. Ordinary Americans from coast to coast are being absolutely crushed by rising prices, and that is not going to change anytime soon. In an article that CNN posted about this new survey, one woman that works for the CDC admitted that she was recently forced to move because costs have risen so aggressively. She said the grocery store is just outrageous right now, but it's not just that. Everything has gone up. Clothing, my insurance, said Angela Russell, an Ohio resident who works as a program analyst at the Centers for Disease Control Prevention, CDC. Russell, who has 2 adult children and 3 grandkids, said she recently moved out of her rental home in Cincinnati in favor of one in a rural area where the rent is cheaper. On recent surveys, other recent surveys have come up with results that are even more alarming. For example, one discovered what a whopping 71% of Americans are stressed out about their ability to afford everyday expenses. 71% of Americans say they're stressed by their ability to afford everyday expenses. Americans most regularly spend money on groceries, phone bills, utilities, gasoline, and rent or mortgage payments. Grocery bills frustrate Americans more than any other regular expense. Utilities, rent, mortgage payments, gasoline, and insurance payments round out the top 5 most annoying expenses. That is most of the country. Unsurprisingly, younger generations are being hit particularly hard by the pain of inflation. Financial stress levels are highest among millennials, 77%, followed by Generation Z, 75%, and Generation X, 74%. Baby boomers reported experiencing the least financial stress, although at 59% it was still more than half of those surveyed. Those that follow my work regularly know that I tend to rant about rising prices at the grocery store. Sometimes it's hard for me to believe that prices have gotten so high, and it appears that a lot of people out there agree with me. Another recent survey found that 80% of Americans have observed a notable increase in grocery store prices. According to a study by Qualtrics on behalf of Intuit Credit Karma, 80% of Americans say they have felt a notable increase in grocery costs in recent years. More than a quarter of respondents said the increased cost has led them to occasionally skip meals, while about a third said they spend more than 60% of their monthly income on mandatory expenses such as food, utilities, and rent. Food has certainly become ridiculously expensive, but we actually spend far more money on housing. Today, the typical household spends about 12% of total income on food and about 33% of total income on housing. According to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the top three annual expenses for the average American household in 2022, the most recent data available, were housing, 33.3%, transportation, 16.8%, and food, 12.8%. For most Americans, spending money in these areas is unavoidable. Housing costs have been rising much faster than overall rate of inflation, and we just learned that home prices reached yet another new all-time record high last month. Home prices hit a new high in June for a second straight month, the latest sign that the housing market is unaffordable to millions of Americans. The spring home buying season, usually the busiest time of year for housing market, was a dud this year. Home sales declined in June for the fourth straight time on a monthly basis. The combination of high prices and elevated mortgage rates has made home ownerships less attractive to renters and deterred current homeowners from moving. Meanwhile, homelessness in the United States is at the highest level ever recorded, and it has been growing at the fastest pace ever recorded. We just can't keep going on like this. Something has to give. It appears to be inevitable that all of this economic pain will have a dramatic impact on the upcoming election. At this point, approximately 3 out of every 5 Americans believe that we are already in a recession right now. You don't need to be a financial genius to know that times are tough for plenty of Americans. With that in mind, a majority of people actually think the economy is doing even worse than the experts say it is. 3 in 5 people believe that the U.S. is currently in a recession, even though we are not officially in one according to the financial definition. The survey of 2,000 Americans explored what's driving this lack of consumer confidence in the economy. Inflation and the rising cost of living, 68%, top the list of reasons why residents believe the U.S. is in a recession, followed by friends and family members complaining about money, 50%. It's not an accident that it has happened. For more than a decade, people like me have been relentlessly warning that the decisions that our leaders were making would have disastrous consequences, and that's exactly what has happened. And if we stay on the path we're on, it would not be too long before we witness a meltdown of absolutely epic proportions. Michael Snyder reports on the Economic Collapse blog. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. This is by Michael Snyder. About the author, Michael Snyder's extremely controversial new book entitled Chaos is available in paperback and for Kindle on Amazon. He's also written 7 other books that are available on Amazon, including End Times, 7-Year Apocalypse, Lost Prophets and the Future of America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters. When you purchase any of Michael's books, you help to support the work he's doing. You can also get his articles by email as soon as he publishes them by subscribing to his Substack newsletter. Michael has published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and the most important news. And he always freely and happily allows others to republish those articles on their own websites. These are such troubled times and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, we strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. Support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.